Hello everyone, I'm Terry Duke, and welcome to my channel. On this channel for the past year, I've mostly been covering mods for the same two games. But as I've run out of mods to cover for these games, and I plan on branching out on other games, I've had to look back on my Steam library to see some of the games I've been playing in the past few years. And in the process, this gave me an idea. So this video is about the 10 Steam games that I played the most. Now obviously, if those are the games I played the most, it means I like them a lot. So don't really think of this video as reviews for those games as much as like free publicities for these games. I just want to tell you about some of the best games I've ever played, tell you a bit about those games, what they're about, and why they're on that list in the first place. Hopefully this inspires you to pick up some new games and have some new gaming experiences. Or maybe you've already played those games, in which case this video will inspire you to reinstall them to have that experience again. It's also likely that some of these games will be featured in future videos, because a lot of them have fairly strong modding communities. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you can support the channel with a like and subscribe, and don't forget to tell me in the comments what games you played the most. Now, let's do this. Now this starts off a bit awkward because the first 4 games I'm going to mention are actually all part of the same franchise. We have, starting at number 10, Shogun 2 Total War, followed by Rome 2 Total War, followed by Empire Total War, and finally, Empire Total War. And the 4 games put together total about 774 hours of playtime, which is just about 30 days of my life. So what is Total War? Well, Total War is a long series of strategy games dating back to the 2000s. And the goal of each game is roughly the same. The game sets you in a specific time and place, you pick a kingdom from that time and place, and then you just set forth and conquer the world. What's cool about these games is that they have 2 distinct parts in the gameplay. On one side, it's kind of like a kingdom simulator. As the king, or queen, you tax your nation, you build infrastructure, you develop new technologies, and you do diplomacy with neighboring kingdoms. But on the other side, you obviously gotta go to war, and that means leading huge armies in battle. But you don't do it as a soldier in third person or something. And it's not like turn-based strategy either. In Total War, fights are fought essentially from the perspective of the commander. You know in movies when you see like the commander at top of hill just watching the battle unfold? This is you in Total War, and you just observe as waves of military units just clash at each other in formation. And in Total War, winning a battle that way is all about using conventional tactics as they would have been applied in real life. So you learn quickly to charge in proper formation. You also learn very quickly, you don't charge your cavalry like right into a line of pikes. You have your cavalry go around and attack from behind. And the thing about these battles is that they are addictively cinematic. Simply put, there are no games like Total War to really show you just how epic some of these battles at the time could have possibly been. And this opportunity to become a master tactician, being a conqueror in your own right, it's just too good an appeal to resist. And broadly, that's what Total War is. The games themselves, however, are not related to each other in any significant ways. So for example, you could have a game on the Roman Empire, just as it is you could have one on feudal Japan, or medieval Europe. And whatever game you pick, that's the setting you're in, and that's what you're playing with. But what that also means for the player is you don't have to play every single game to experience Total War. You can just pick the time period you prefer the most, and just go from there. Even games like Rome and Rome 2 are not sequels. Rome 2 is just the newer version of Rome Total War. Same with Shogun 2 and Medieval 2. Now, the latest games especially do have a bit more to them. There's obviously the online aspect, players can play against each other online, but I'm a noob, so I never bothered with it. There's also a fairly big modding community for some of the latest games, especially Shogun 2, Rome 2, and Attila. I haven't gotten into the modding much yet, I've done a bit for Empire, but I still have a lot to discover in terms of Total War mods. In terms of playtime, Napoleon Total War is the one game I played the most, and it mostly has to do with the fact that every time Epic History TV releases a new video on Napoleon, it just hypes me up and makes me want to play the game again. But in retrospect, I would probably say Empire is my favorite one. Much like Napoleon, it's set in the gunpowder era, and this is an era that I think, you know, with the firing lines, the muskets, and the artillery, this is something that Total War implemented really well. And while I do love the aesthetic of the Napoleonic Wars, Empire Total War is more focused on empires, and it's the only game in the franchise, to my knowledge, that has 3 world maps, with Europe, America, and India. And what that means is it's the only Total War game that is set on a global scale. And as a result, there's also a lot of emphasis on naval warfare, and those ships just firing all those broadsides at each other. It's so satisfying. Now, Rome 2 and Shogun 2 are also very solid Total War entries, but by then it just comes down to preferences and historical setting. I do love the samurai, I do love the Roman Empire, but in my personal opinion, the muskets are just more appealing. But that already covers 4 games out of 10. So at number 6, currently at 346 hours of playtime, we have The Long Dark. The Long Dark is a game I bought on sale years ago without even knowing what it was, without even really thinking about it. But as I tried it and played it more and more, I found myself really enjoying it. The Long Dark is a survival game. As the player, you're stranded on a remote fictional island on the northern coast of Canada. Great Bear Island, as it's called, is filled with all kinds of wildlife. There's a lot of ghost towns, and as the player, your only objective is to survive for as long as possible. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. However, the gameplay and the atmosphere really makes the game. In The Long Dark, there was a mysterious geomagnetic disaster that caused all the power to go out, and for all humans to either die, disappear, or flee. The game really centers around what it calls a quiet apocalypse. As far as you know in the game, you might as well be the last human alive. And it's as if Mother Nature is slowly taking the life back through increasing drastic extreme colds and blizzards. There's even like this weird phenomenon where whenever there's auroras in the night sky, the power in infrastructure and buildings tend to glitch and come back on, and you don't really know how it's related. And the auroras also cause animals to become extremely aggressive, but if you go into the light, they're afraid of the light, so they run away from it like vampires. It's a really strange, creepy, but fascinating world to be living in. As a survivor in The Long Dark, the game centers around your life bar, which will stay full so long as all your needs are constantly met. You need to drink enough water, you need to eat enough food, you need to rest plenty, you can't freeze off. The cold will kill you like really fast. And so as part of the game, you are constantly moving around the island, scavenging for food in old buildings, or hunting animals for meat, developing all your survival skills to make clothes, to repair them, to improve your gear. And in terms of gameplay, it's as complex as it is easy to grasp. It flows really well. The Long Dark is a game that can be played in a very laid-back manner. Most of the time it's fairly quiet with just the simple sounds of nature. You can easily listen to your podcasts or whatever while you're playing the game, but on the other side, you can also set the difficulty to make the game extremely challenging. There's also different modes to the game, the standard one being survival mode. There's also the story mode called Wintermute, which is a story involving 2 characters that are trying to make their way around the island. To be honest, the story is actually really good, and Wintermute on its own is definitely worth getting the game, but I won't spoil it obviously. The only issue is that they haven't finished releasing the full story. The story is divided into episodes. There's supposed to be 5 of them. They've been releasing like 1 episode every 2 years, and there's still 1 left. So if you play the game right now, you can play like the first 4 episodes, but the 5th you still have to wait. And then there's the challenge mode, where you can choose like between different scenarios, and they give you like very specific objectives that only takes like a few hours of gameplay. It's like if you wanted to play for like just 1 afternoon, you just pick a challenge and you just go from there. I will make an honorable mention though for the Dark Walker challenge, which in its own right is one of the most nerve-wracking horror games I've ever played. But generally, that's The Long Dark. Not every game has to be fast-paced to be good, and The Long Dark is a prime example of that. And ever since I got the game, I have had moments of just coming back to the game to play a few sessions. I've actually found it to be very therapeutic, hence why I have so many hours of playtime over the years. But, on the opposite side of stress-free games, let's talk about XCOM. Now, XCOM is a long series of turn-based strategy games that dates back to the 90s. But in 2012, the series was effectively rebooted with the game XCOM Enemy Unknown to bring the gaming experience of XCOM to a new generation of players. And this is where my love story with XCOM began. In XCOM Enemy Unknown, Earth is invaded by aliens, but it's not like a Independence Day, earth-shattering kind of alien invasion. It's more like small incursions here and there, adopting people. Plenty of aliens to cause the whole world to panic, but not nearly enough to really threaten humanity. At least not yet. And so the governments of the world create the Council of Nations, and through which they fund a new program called XCOM, which is like the most elite army in the world with the best engineers and the best scientists to essentially combat the alien threat. And as the player, you're in charge of XCOM. And similarly to Total War, the game is played in two different parts. You have the tactical deployments, and you have the overall campaign. In the tactical deployments, you basically send out squads of soldiers to respond to all kinds of alien threats. Abductions, or just random terror attacks. And aliens in XCOM are super advanced in terms of technology and weaponry. In terms of tactical deployments, XCOM is virtually always outnumbered and always has the weakest weapons. So how do you beat the aliens? With strategy. As a turn-based games, each turn where you can deploy all your soldiers, every single move becomes crucial to outsmarting the aliens. That means getting the high ground, finding ways to outflank the aliens to attack them from the sides, using smoke grenades to give yourself extra covers, using suppressive fire to reduce their aim. There are many different ways of achieving victory, and almost none of them involves attacking the aliens directly. Once you beat the aliens though, that's when you get into the second part of the game. See, if the aliens are more advanced technologically, part of what XCOM does is try to understand alien technology to adapt it to your own. So if the aliens have laser weapons, you need to study those weapons to develop your own variants of laser weapons. If they start bringing mechs into battle, you need to create your own super soldiers and your own mechs to counter those new alien threats. And so in a lot of ways, the games is kind of like a weapons race, as you keep developing your technology to get the best weapons possible, and aliens keep bringing new aliens, and it's just like this escalation non-stop. And as you get into the late game, the battles become so ridiculous. There's so many varieties of tactics that you can use, of items, of perks. The soldiers themselves that you use develop new skills as they gain experience in battle, and these skills can be used in a variety of ways. And that's what makes XCOM so damn addictive. The battles are just awesome. However, on the other side of things, this is where I have to admit that despite my love of XCOM, this is very toxic love. XCOM is as enjoyable as it can be soul-crushing. You see, the thing about XCOM is that your soldiers in the game are expendable, and you can only ever deploy a few of them at a time. But through those missions, as your soldiers gain experience, they become more and more reliable alien killing machines. But when those soldiers die, they're gone forever. Losing a soldier, or for that matter, losing an entire squad, does not end the game. In fact, you can lose an entire squad, you can lose a mission, and still move on to win other missions with other soldiers and still beat the game. But spending hours upon hours, mission after mission, getting a few soldiers to really become absolute badasses, only to permanently lose them in a moment of bad luck, is something that XCOM players are just all too familiar with. And a lot of the times, this really just comes down to bad luck. The likelihood of a soldier killing an alien depends on a variety of factors, such as how far the alien is, whether the alien has good cover. So a lot of the times, you spend all your moves, and that's the situation you're in, and there is nothing you can do to increase the likelihood of getting that shot. It can be a complete roll of dice. No veteran XCOM player has ever been immune to missing a 95% shot. And a lot of times, hitting your target can be the difference between losing that soldier or the mission just reversing completely. So the XCOM games are designed to be enjoyable, yes, but they're also designed to be very challenging and very punishing. A lot of hardcore XCOM players are actually into those games for that reason. They actually have a blast going on missions and just completely losing control. But I'm not one of those players. I enjoy the game, I don't enjoy the punishment. I've also raged quite a bit at it. But yeah, it is nonetheless a very good game. And it also has a fairly strong modding community as well. Most notably, there's a mod called The Long War that basically takes everything I said about XCOM and just brings it up to 15. So, you want even crazier battles? You want even more punishment? You play XCOM with a Long War mod. But now it's time to get into a game that my community is all too familiar with. At number 4, with 476 hours on record, this is Bannerlord. Now, I don't want to get too much into what Mount & Blade is, because I've already made a whole video on it, so make sure to check it out. But to sum it up, imagine the tactical aspects of a battle in Total War with all the elements you would expect from your RPG, and then putting those together, that's what Mount & Blade is. You create a character, you level it up, but in the process of leveling it up, you're also building your own army, and then you end up leading that army in battle. So you're in the battle. These battles can have hundreds of troops in them, just clashing into each other, and you're right in the middle of it, just cutting your way out. You can also lay siege to castles, massive epic sieges, and it's all with the primary goal of carving out your own kingdom that you end up managing, again like in Total War. So that's what makes the Mount & Blade games so amazing, and Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord just happens to be the latest of the bunch. Overall, I really enjoy Bannerlord. The graphics hold up really well, the game is well optimized, the gameplay is pretty solid, but like its predecessor, Mount & Blade Warband, the game itself is only half the appeal. The Mount & Blade games, including Bannerlord, have a pretty huge modding community. And these mods range from tiny additions to the game to massive total conversions, which is when you take the entire game and just dump it into another universe, like Lord of the Rings or Warhammer. The only reason I haven't played it as much why it's not higher on the list is because it's still just 3 years old, it's fairly fresh, and the mods are still not out. Some of them are, but there's not that many mods yet. We have to wait a bit more. But that's Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. It is a pretty good game, definite recommend. At number 3, with 690 hours, this will also be pretty quick because it's XCOM 2. XCOM 2 is a great example of the perfect sequel. If the first XCOM was about fighting alien invaders in modern day, XCOM 2 is fighting aliens in a cyberpunk future where aliens already won. They are now in power. They have control over Earth, and XCOM has been reduced to a tiny terrorist faction. Yeah, this is a pretty intense setting, and the tactical deployments in this context are about sabotaging the alien government. You attack supply lines, you execute key officials, you steal data, all while still developing your technology, training your soldiers, and trying to find out what the secret agenda of the alien government is. Broadly speaking, the gameplay, the graphics, everything has been massively improved. There's introductions of plenty of new units and troop classes. The aliens also have new units that work very differently, but it's still just as crazy, and the modding community is even bigger. And thanks to the Steam Workshop, installing mods for XCOM 2 is ridiculously easy. We're talking new units, both for you the humans and the aliens, tons of new customization options, voice packs to turn your soldiers into characters from other games, and just overall a whole bunch of different things. Because of that, XCOM 2 is just like XCOM 1, but so much more, therefore just more replayability all around. And yes, this is still very much a toxic relationship. But moving on to number 2. At over 700 hours, it recently just surpassed XCOM 2 in terms of playtime. Let's talk about Fallout. The Fallout series is something you're either fairly well versed into or know little to nothing about it. There are YouTube channels dedicated to covering the Fallout games and the Fallout lore and whatever, so for this video, I'll keep it very brief. The Fallout games, at least starting with Fallout 3, are RPG games, and it follows humanity as it struggles to get back on its feet in a post-apocalyptic future that also looks like the 1950s. The retro future, as it's called, is part of the aesthetic that make the Fallout games so fascinating to many. In the Fallout universe, the US never really moved past the 1950s aesthetic, whether it's the haircuts, the fashion, the music, the cars. It all looks like the 1950s, but also it's set in the future, so they have a bunch of stuff like power armor and really advanced robots, but it still looks like the 1950s. Now each game, as far as I know, is its own standalone story. So in Fallout 4 you play as the sole survivor, someone from before the nuclear apocalypse that was kept frozen in a bunker just before the bombs fell. And as you come out of the bunker 200 years later, you now try to survive in the wasteland. As an RPG, you basically get all the gameplay elements you would expect. There's a huge skill tree so you can build your characters around specific stuff any way you want. There's lots of loot, there's leveling up, there's lots of gear, there's lots of quests. And again, the main reason to pick this game over any other RPG is the setting itself. It's actually nice to move away from what is almost stereotypical now, fantasy worlds like Diablo, Skyrim, and The Witcher. It's nice to just play that kind of game with guns in a post-apocalyptic future with a 1950s aesthetic. It's just nice, it's just refreshing, and it works really well. Much like The Long Dark, Fallout 4 was a game I bought on a whim without really thinking about it, and I've just come to really enjoy it. It's got lots of replay value, it's really fun. There's a lot of replay value that comes in two ways. First off, the game itself is already massive. there's tons of places to explore, there's tons of quests, and there's even a couple of DLCs that can really keep you busy for a while. There's crafting, so much things you can do. There's even several factions in the story, so you can play the story several times, picking different factions to get different endings. There's a lot of possibilities here, and that's one of the reasons people keep playing it. The other reason is that the Fallout games are probably some of the most modded games in history right after Skyrim. Fallout 4 has thousands upon thousands of mods that are very easy to install once you figure it out, and these mods add so much replay value. You can change the entire atmosphere of the game, you can bring in new gameplay elements, monsters and NPCs to kill, new quests. There's just so many things to do with Fallout 4 mods that that's it. That's my face. That's all I can say. It's huge. Currently, I'm on my 4th playthrough in the past 3 or 4 years, and I'm still having a blast. I have like 120 mods currently loaded simultaneously into the game, and I'm having a blast with all of them. And yes, it is my plan in the near future to make videos on Fallout 4 mods, to showcase my favorite ones, to cover the ones that my community will recommend. If you like Fallout games, if you like Fallout mods, make sure to stick around because these videos are coming. And really, that's Fallout 4, Fallout. It's amazing. Get it. I'm sure you'll love it. But now we've reached the first game, the game I've played the most. And I gotta put it in perspective, okay? So the past 3 games I mentioned, when you put them together, they amount to about 1,872 hours of playtime, currently. Now the first game I've played for about 1,800 hours. So the game I've played the most, I played nearly as much as XCOM 2, Fallout 4, and Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord put together. Well, my core audience already knows what the game is, so no point hyping it up more. Here it is. Once again, since I already mentioned the game from the franchise, there's not much more to mention here. Now yes, I would say by the sheer amount of time I've put into this game in the past decade, it's probably my favorite game of all time. However, I've played it so much since I first started that I've pretty much become numb to it at this point. Warband was a serious game for me. I was introduced to it in 2011, and I've pretty much been playing it here and there ever since. Like I said about Bannerlord, the same goes here. The idea that you can create your own character and build your own army and just go about conquering the world and stuff, it truly makes for an amazing gaming experience. But Warband, being significantly older, has a much more developed, much bigger, much more ambitious modding community. Warband probably has one of the best modding communities that I've ever seen. Because the game is fairly small and old, it is so easy to mod that there's just dozens upon dozens of total conversions, taking the entire game and dumping it anywhere else. You want to go to feudal Japan? No problem. You want to go in Westeros? No problem. You want to go in Warhammer? No problem. You want to go in Star Wars? No problem. You can be anywhere, and it will still be a very solid gaming experience. There are so many mods on Warband that I've made videos after videos covering all of these mods. Every time I thought I was done, people just kept recommending more mods for me to play. I even tried to make a ranking. I ranked 42 mods for Warband, and people still kept recommending them. At this point, I must be close to like 70 mods. The mods never end. They never stop. There's so many of them. They are so good. Whatever you like, there's a mod for you. Warband is just crazy, and that's what makes it so awesome and why I played it so damn much. Anyway, sorry for the little crazy side here, but that's about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, you can subscribe me if you want to support the channel. And actually, you should subscribe because I decided to do something even funnier. Next time, I will be reviewing the 10 Steam games I played the least. And so it should be pretty funny, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. I'm not going to pretend here that like 1800 hours is like the most someone has ever played for a game. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be going in the comments to tell me, I played 3,000 hours on that game. Well, feel free to let me know because I will put those games on my wish list and they seem pretty good. And maybe I'll make videos on those games you recommend. Who the hell knows? Everything is possible. But subscribe and we'll find out together. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.